Mindset is such a buzzword these days, and for good reason. The rise in mental health discussion has us all more aware of our mental state and how it affects every single thing around us, and it's no different for creatives. So how does mindset play in the psyche of our creativity? Let's dive into it today. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. My name is Dustin Peed, creative coach and consultant. I'm so glad to be with you on part 2 of the psychology of creativity. Now, just a disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional. These are just my observations that I've seen work in myself and the creatives around me, the creative community around me, teams that I've worked for. So take it for what it is as life experience, but not as psychological licensed clinical advice. So I need to just put that disclaimer out there right at the top. But I want to remind you that I'm here at the core of it all. I'm here to help creatives know themselves, know their process, and know their team so that they can create greater things together. Before we dive into today's episode, if you're listening to this on an audio podcast platform, I'm so very thankful for that. Thank you for listening. I would love for you to leave a 5-star rating and review to help get this content out to more people like you who could benefit from it. Feel free to share this podcast as well, wherever you're listening to it at. We release this on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm so thankful that you're here as well. Would love for you to like this particular video. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and ring the bell as well. That way you're notified every time new content drops, which we drop this podcast every single Thursday. You can find me on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those places at Dustin Peed. That's P-E-A-D. And you can also find everything that I'm doing at dustinpeed.com. You can go there and grab a free consultation with me on your creative process or your work or your organization or any way that you feel like I might be able to help you. You can hop on my calendar and we can chat for free. Would love for you to do that. All right, so let's get into it. Listen, we know that mindset is key, right? Each day you wake up, you have a very important choice to make. Your day is just the sum of all of the choices that you make. You have the power and you get to decide what kind of day it's going to be. Is it going to be a great day or a bad day? A creative day or a drowning day? You get to decide. So we're going to spend this episode kind of going through kind of a book review and some highlights on what I took away from someone that I think is one of the greatest creative minds of our generation. He is a creative person. He's a leader. He's a pastor. He's an author. He's a filmmaker. He's a designer. He's a serial entrepreneur. His name is Erwin McManus, and Erwin wrote a book. I believe it came out this past year, maybe 2023. Called Mind Shift. I love Erwin because even if you're not a reader, it's super easy to read. They're always concise, to the point, never really longer than they need to be, and super, super powerful. And in this book, Mind Shift, Erwin highlights 12 different shifts that we need to change, or on how we need to change our mindset for the better of ourselves and the better of those around us. I cannot recommend this book strongly enough. Mind Shift by Erwin McManus. So here are a few things that I grabbed from it that I think are super important, not only for any individual, but super important for creatives, especially. The second one that he mentions in his list of 12 is that you don't need an audience. You don't need an audience, creative, and I'm speaking to myself here, that it doesn't matter to me if anyone ever watches this video or listens to this podcast episode. What matters to me is that I am exercising a gift. I'm exercising a muscle that I need to be a better creative myself. And you don't need an audience to exercise. You don't need an audience for you to be able to do what you do. The fifth thing on his list, again, I'm skipping through because these are some of the 12 that I found super important to creatives like us. The fifth thing is that you are your own ceiling, right? The sky is the limit. You can fly as high, all these different motivational posters, right? But it really is true that you are your own ceiling. You will never get past your own ceiling, and so you need to raise that ceiling, and the ceiling often resides in our minds. It is a mental shift. The sixth thing on his list, I love this. He says talent is a hallucinogen. And what he's saying here is that, yes, talent is real and talent can get you far, but it masks true self often because it is very forward and it is very front-facing to the world. And so you need to understand that, yes, while you may have talent, while the person that you look up to or the person that you despise, they may have talent as well, it's a hallucinogen. And what really matters is who you really are. Authenticity is what matters the most. Number 8 on his list, he says, bitterness will kill you. And I want to pause here for a second and shout out next week's episode. I'm going to interview an amazing new friend of mine, Mark Goodman of 70x7.org. And we're going to speak about forgiveness and how it impacts our creativity. So you need to just go ahead and be ready for that episode when it drops next week. But back to the Irwin's book, what he's saying here is important, as well as what we're going to talk about next week, is that bitterness will kill you. You have to get rid of bitterness at all costs out of your mind. It will be that ceiling, and it'll be a super low ceiling for you. 9th on his list, he says, you find what you are. It's this confirmation bias, right? Of like, hey, I'm gonna see things in life the way that I see things because that's the way I am. And so a mind shift for you to understand here is that if you want to understand things better, you want to have greater understanding, greater influence, greater impact, you need to expand that a little bit. Number 10 on his list of mind shifts that we need to make. Be average at almost everything. Now, when I first heard this, I was like, bro. I don't like to be average. I like to be excellent, and anything that I'm going to put my name on, I want it to be great. But you're not listening to the whole phrase. He says, be average at almost everything. You don't have to be great at everything. You can be average at almost everything and be great at just 1 to 2 things. And those are the things that are going to leave a lasting impact. And those are the things that are going to matter the most. Number 11 on his list is the one that I want to kind of wrap up our time on today. And it says that success weighs more than failure. Success weighs more than failure. And this is so loaded. He's saying, obviously, with success comes great responsibility, but also don't put so much weight on your failure, because no one's really going to remember those things. They're going to remember the successes. No one remembers the almost hundreds of variations of a light bulb that Thomas Edison came up with. They remember the one that he came up with. They remember the one that worked. They remember the success. And so that success weighs far more than any failure you may have. And you know that if you've been listening over the past few weeks, that I've been harping on this because it's so important for you to see failures as opportunities and not as weaknesses. So a couple things I want to call you to action towards here at the end of this week's episode. I would encourage you to pick one of these mind shifts and make it your mindset for the week. You don't need an audience. You are your own ceiling. Talent is a hallucinogen. Bitterness will kill you. You find what you are. Be average at almost everything. Success weighs more than failure. And this is just 7 of the 12 that he lists in the book. So my second call to action for you is, if you're a reader, go read this book. If you're not a reader and you're like to watch video or listen to a podcast like this, go get the audiobook. Erwin is the narrator on the audio version. It's how I consumed the book as well, and it is fantastic. The book is Mind Shift by Erwin McManus. Check that book out. Lastly, if you need any help with this mind shift in these mindsets in yourself or your team, I would love to help you break through in that. You can hop on my website, dustinp.com, book a free time with me on my calendar, and we can begin this conversation and bring in some outside help. Sometimes is what you need to do to be able to kind of snap out of different mindsets and create better mindset patterns and shifts. Now, with all that said, before I leave you today, I just have to stress the importance of next week's episode. Next week, I have a friend on here, Mark Goodman, who is the founder of 70 times 7. It's 70times7.org if you want to check out the website in advance. He has an amazing book out where he tells the story of his radical forgiveness journey. And I can promise you, you will not want to miss this episode. There will be things in your life that will keep you from listening to this interview. Please push past those things. Just personally, that has nothing to do with me getting ratings up or nothing to do with me getting more likes or subscribes. I don't care about any of that. I care about you being able to hear this interview because I believe it'll change your life for the better. So tune in next week. We're going to talk about how forgiveness impacts your creativity, because it impacts every single area of our life. And Mark Goodman is going to share some incredible insight into that when I get to interview him next week. That's all for this week. I can't wait to share that interview with you next week on Creativity Made Easy.